Welcome to Star Watch Now, your front row seat to all the hottest gossip, drama, and breaking news from the world of entertainment. If it's trending, shocking, or star-studded, we're covering it. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
Everyone thought this would be another familiar moment. A celebrity asked about marriage. A carefully prepared answer. A polite smile. Something vague enough to offend no one and excite everyone just a little. That was the expectation. That was the script people were waiting for. But what came out instead felt different. It felt quieter. He did not talk about love. He did not talk about timing. He did not talk about the future people wanted to hear about. He spoke about distance, about how far that idea felt from his current life. And in that moment, something shifted. Because when someone at the very center of attention admits that marriage feels far away, it forces a much deeper question. Not about weddings or relationships, but about what it actually means to live. At an age when society expects certainty, he offered honesty instead. No drama, no performance, just a calm statement that carried more weight than 1,000 rumors. And perhaps that is why this moment spread so quickly. Because beneath the surface, this was never really about marriage at all. It was about pressure, about pace, about a life that looks full from the outside, yet leaves very little room to breathe on the inside. And once you hear it that way, it becomes impossible to stop listening. The conversation began simply. A question about future plans, family, marriage. The kind of question that sounds harmless, yet carries decades of expectation behind it. At 28, successful, admired, constantly in motion, people assume certain milestones should already be within reach. But instead of decorating his answer with optimism, he paused. And then he said it plainly. It feels too far away. Not now. Not like this. There was no rejection of love in his voice, no bitterness, only realism. He spoke about work, yes, but not in the usual way, not as a badge of honor or an excuse, more like a fact of life that has quietly taken over every corner of his time. Days that begin before sunrise and end long after most lights are off. Schedules that overlap until one place blends into another. Sets, rehearsals, travel, preparation, always moving, always watched. In that rhythm, it becomes difficult to locate yourself. Not the public version, the private one. What stood out was not how busy he is. Many people are busy. What stood out was what that busyness costs. He spoke about how being a public figure changes the way you exist in the world. Even the simplest moments are filtered through expectation. How relaxation becomes a performance. How silence is rarely just silence. Over time, that distance grows. Not from others, but from yourself. And when you live like that, responsibility begins to feel heavier. Not because you fear commitment, but because you respect it too much to treat it lightly. He said something that resonated far beyond entertainment headlines. That before you can be responsible for another person, you must first be responsible for yourself. It was not said dramatically. It did not need to be. The truth carried its own gravity. Then he spoke about something else, something quieter, a moment away from the noise. A trip that allowed him to slow down. Time spent climbing, surrounded by people who were there for one reason only. Shared interest, shared effort. No cameras, no titles. Just movement, focus, and conversation that did not lead anywhere beyond the present moment. He described how grounding that felt, how rare it was to meet people without roles attached. In those moments, he said, life felt more real, more complete. And that detail mattered because it reframed the entire conversation. This was not someone running away from commitment. This was someone rediscovering what it feels like to be present, to exist without constantly adjusting yourself to fit an image. What followed online was almost immediate. Some were surprised, some relieved, many deeply understood. Because the reality he described is not unique to fame. It is familiar to anyone who has ever felt trapped between expectation and exhaustion. The idea that life must follow a fixed timeline. Study, work, marry, settle. But what if the order does not fit everyone? What if rushing into the next chapter only leads to resentment instead of stability? His words offered permission, not to avoid responsibility, but to approach it honestly, to admit when something feels premature rather than pretending readiness. That honesty is rare, especially in a world that rewards polished answers over sincere ones. There was also something quietly inspiring in the way he spoke about fulfillment, not as something grand, but as something personal. Fulfillment for him came from immersion, from giving himself fully to what he was doing, whether it was work or a hobby, from moments where effort met clarity. In that sense, his perspective felt less like a refusal and more like alignment. Aligning his life with his current capacity, aligning his choices with who he is right now, not who he is expected to be. And that is a message many people needed to hear, that it is acceptable to choose focus over convention, growth over appearance, substance over schedule. What makes this moment linger is its calmness. There was no attempt to turn it into a headline. No emotional exaggeration, just a grounded explanation delivered with self-awareness. In an industry where ambiguity often protects image, clarity can feel radical. And perhaps that is why this conversation continues to circulate. Because it did not promise anything. It did not sell a dream. It simply acknowledged reality. And in doing so, it allowed others to reflect on their own lives, on the pressure they feel, on the timelines they have inherited without question, on whether they are truly ready for the roles they are expected to play. At its core, this was a story about choosing presence over projection, about recognizing that a meaningful life cannot be rushed without consequence, about understanding that some seasons are meant for building, not settling, and that there is strength in admitting when you are still becoming. For many viewers, this was not just a celebrity speaking. It was a reminder that life does not lose value simply because it does not follow a predetermined path. Sometimes the most responsible choice is to wait, to grow, to listen to yourself before committing to someone else. If this story resonated with you, if it made you pause and reflect on your own pace, then you are not alone. At Star Watch Now, we share stories like this because they reveal the human side behind public moments. Thank you for spending this time with us. If you appreciate thoughtful storytelling that goes beyond the surface, consider subscribing to the channel and joining our community. Your support allows us to continue bringing you stories that matter. Until next time, take care of yourself, move at your own rhythm, and remember that your journey does not need to look like anyone else's to be meaningful.